Come with me now. Go with me now. I'm gonna take you down. Go with me now. I'm gonna show you how. Go with me now.
And welcome back. So basically we're going to cover how currencies go up and down in value due to multiple events. If you've ever traveled around the world, maybe you had to exchange your dollars for a foreign currency. And so we're going to basically just learn how that works. Okay, currencies follow the same laws of supply and demand as do product markets. So we're going to apply some of the stuff that we learned in Unit 1 to the currency exchange in Unit 2. So first I want to make sure we get some terminology down. Okay, we need to be aware that a fixed exchange rate is where the value of a currency is pegged to a specific value compared to another currency. So the example I give was the Hong Kong dollar. Alright, a floating exchange rate, which is actually what we're going to be covering today, because it's actually, it does indeed adhere to the laws of supply and demand. This is where the value of the currency is allowed to fluctuate. And so it is subject to the laws of supply and demand. Alright, so fantasy exchange rate, this is just for fun. Okay, there's a, in Venezuela they say that their Bolivar exchanges at a certain rate per dollar, but it creates a black market. So it's kind of like a price floor or price ceiling for currency. Alright, whenever we say appreciation, we're talking about a currency going up in value. If we say depreciation, it's a decrease in value. Some synonyms for that would be strong for appreciation or weak for depreciating. And then the foreign exchange market is basically where all of this stuff takes place. So I want you to think of this as just like if you want to, just think of it as an island in the middle of the ocean where currencies are traded. Okay? And that's going to be important because when we talk about currencies, we're not talking about money specifically. Okay? In economic terms, money's a little bit different. Currency in a foreign exchange market is just the amount of currency that is available for trade. So it doesn't include the money in our pockets. Okay? So here's what I meant by a fantasy exchange rate. So in Venezuela, they set the official exchange rate at 6.35 bolivars to $1. Okay, the black market has it pegged way above 600 bolivars per $1. Okay, so nobody in their right mind is going to actually trade at the official exchange rate. That would make no sense. Okay, Zimbabwe had a similar situation. I have a $100 trillion Zimbabwe bill, and at one point in time, their official exchange rate said it was worth 300,000 US dollars. I wish it were, but it is not. Okay, so before we look at exchange of currencies, we need to be aware that if you buy something from another country, what you're really having to do is buy their currency first. Okay, so if the US wants to buy Japanese cars, first we have to send US dollars to a foreign exchange bank where it is then traded for yen. Okay, the Japanese car dealer then is going to take the yen and they'll ship the Japanese car over to the United States. So that's basically how this is all working. So I'm going to give you an analogy for the foreign exchange market. Alright, so this is a marketplace where currencies are traded. So for example, if you want to go on vacation in Mexico, you first need to buy pesos. So there is a peso market in the foreign exchange market. So what I want you to think of is me inside a little cashier's window, and behind me I've got a box of every kind of currency that exists. Okay, so when you want to go to Mexico, you come to me first and you say, I demand some pesos. Well, that means the demand for pesos is going to increase, which drives the price higher. Okay, in exchange for the pesos, you have to give me US dollars. Well, that's going to cause me to have more US dollars, so the supply of the US dollar increases and the price of the dollar will decrease. So that's how I want you to think of this. Okay, it's not that there's more dollars in the world. I just now have more dollars in the little box that is behind me in the foreign exchange market. All right. So let's see why this makes a difference. Okay. I think you all know Hans and Franz. Okay, these two guys are personal trainers from Austria. All right, they charge 100 euros for a training session. So if 100 euros is trading, if $1 will buy 1 euro, then their training sessions are going to cost $100. Okay, so if AA Ron Rogers wants to go get trained, he's got to take 100 US dollars with him. All right, and if for whatever reason now $1 will only buy 0.8 euros, that means AA Ron is going to have to bring with him $125. So what that means is this. What you do is you take the 100 euros and you divide by the exchange rate, and that gives you the dollar price. Okay, so that's how I did that. So this is euros. This is the exchange rate for euros. $1 will buy 0.8 euros, and so that gives you $125. All right, what happened there, since the dollar won't buy as many euros, the dollar got weaker. Okay, so if the dollar won't buy as much, we say it gets weaker. All right. On the other hand, if a dollar will now buy 1.5 euros, now we're going to say the dollar got stronger. And so now AA Ron only has to bring 67 US dollars with him for his training sessions. And so that's basically how appreciation and depreciation of currency does affect people. Okay? So, I'm going to show you another example of how to calculate exchange rates and then the price of goods. Okay, and when I do this, what I want to do is I'm going to show you a little history. All right, so in 2008, $1 would buy this many South Korean won. All right, a little bit later, now the dollar will buy this many. All right, since the dollar is now buying more of them, we say the dollar got stronger. All right, the won got weaker. Keep on going. And now the dollar got weaker because it'll only buy 12.22 of the South Korean won. Okay, and we keep on going. I'm kind of a nerd, so I look these up every year. Dollar got stronger because it'll buy more won.
Do you feel this vehicle is safe for highway travel?
Yes, I do. Yes, I really do. I believe that. I know it's not pretty to look at, but it'll get you where you want to go.
All right, yeah, the Kia Rio. Anybody know what this thing costs? Good guess, but no. It costs 12 million South Korean won. So the reason I put 12 million is because it's made in Korea, and Koreans prefer to be paid in their own local currency. So it actually costs 12 million won. All right. So when the won was trading at 1,800 to $1, the price of the car was $6,667. How did I do that? I took the 12 million won and I divided by the exchange rate, which was 1,800 won per dollar. That's what gave me $6,667. So why don't you pause for a second and try to do the rest of these. Alright, we're unpausing. So basically the hamsters are buying this car, okay, and it's now 2009. Now 1,200 won per dollar means the car cost how much? Now it's $10,000. Okay, got more expensive, so we took 12 million and divided by 1,200. And then in February of 2010, the car cost 7,500 US dollars. And then finally today, I checked today's rate, the car costs $10,676. All right. So the hamsters over here, they're very excited that they bought their Kia in February of 2009. Now, the reason that they are glad they bought it then is because essentially the dollar was stronger back then. And so they got the car at a lower American dollar price. Obviously, they're American hamsters. You can tell by the clothes they're wearing. All right. These guys here, these are Korean auto workers. Now, it turns out they also liked selling the car back in February of 2009. Now, why is that? Well, because the car was cheaper for Americans to buy, which means they would sell more of them. So remember, they're not getting $6,667. They're getting 12 million yuan. Okay, so regardless of what the exchange rate is, they're still getting 12 million yuan for the car, and so they liked it when the exchange rate was low for the yuan. Okay, so basically what we see now is this: if you have a strong dollar, the U.S. will export less because our goods become more expensive, but will import more because foreign goods become less expensive. So that's very important. Now, what we're going to look at now is why it is that China, their goods always cost less. Okay, so what we're going to look at is how they do that. Okay, what they have done in the past is they've kept their currency artificially low, and so what they've done is they've pegged their exchange rates. All right, and so what they do is, let me just go ahead and put some stuff up here. So this is the Chinese yuan. Okay, we have a supply and a demand and a quantity. Now this is very important. We price the yuan as dollars per yuan. Okay, so if they peg the value at a certain level, here's what happens. If we want to buy, let's say, Barbie dolls from China, first we have to increase our demand for the Chinese yuan. That drives the price higher. Well, what the Chinese would do in exchange with that is they would then print currency, and they would go supply more yuan in the foreign exchange market, which means instead of the value of the yuan increasing, it stays steady, okay, at some predetermined price. And so their goods never really change prices for Americans to pay, and so that allows them to keep their exports up. All right, we'll look at that more closely later. But anyway, you know, some people say, well, that's really smart on their part because that allows them to continue to increase their exports. And it does. It keeps their goods cheap and attractive for us to buy. All right, and it has helped them to build their industrial economy. So it might be a really good investment for the future, but they can't do that forever. And the reason they can't is because what they end up doing is they're paying their workers with currency that's less valuable than it should be. And so if they ever want to buy foreign goods, they're not going to be able to. Okay, it just becomes more and more expensive for them. And so are their leaders really smart? Well, maybe in the short term, but again, this isn't something that can be sustained. All right. All right, another technical thing we need to go over real quick is the idea of purchasing power parity. Okay? What this is it's the idea that a unit of currency should be able to buy the same quantity of goods and services in any country. All right? So whenever we do this, we have to consider exchange rates. So here's an example. If pineapples cost $1.50 in the United States, and the exchange rate for Japanese yen is $1 for 100 Japanese yen, then to keep purchasing power parity, a pineapple should cost 150 yen in Japan, okay? Because the 150 yen is equivalent to $1.50. Okay, that's what we mean by purchasing power parity. All right. So here's what it looks like mathematically, and I'm going to show you this because you'll have to do this on your homework. All right. So make sure you take good notes. Here's a formula for you. All right. The purchase price in country A is going to be the exchange rate for country A's currency times the price in country B. Okay? So for example, we'll look at Mexico and the USA. All right? If the price of a Big Mac is $4 in the US and the exchange rate for pesos is 17.09 pesos per dollar, then 17.09 times $4 should be 68 pesos. So if purchasing power parity holds true, the Big Mac will be $4 in the US and 68 pesos in Mexico. All right? Because the 68 pesos equals $4. All right? So just be aware of that when you see questions on your homework that requires you to do this. You got to use this formula and then refer back to this example. All right? So let's explain why purchasing power parity holds up. All right? So consider the markets for oranges in Florida and New York. Where would you expect oranges to be cheaper? I would think you would expect them to be cheaper in Florida. Okay, so let's examine why that should be the case. Okay, you got price there, and then here's some New York oranges. You can probably already tell why they should be cheaper in Florida. Okay, has to do with the supply. All right, our supply curve in Florida is much further to the right than the supply curve in New York. So let's just put a fake price on here. Let's say they're selling for $1 in Florida, but they're selling for $2 in New York. All right, if you were a Florida orange grower, where would you prefer to sell your oranges? That's right, you would prefer to sell them in New York. And let's say you could ship them up there for a pretty low price. Would that make sense for you to do? Absolutely it would. So you're going to ship them to New York, which is going to increase the supply of oranges in New York, which drives the price down. And since you're taking them out of Florida, you're reducing the supply of oranges in Florida, which is going to drive the price higher. Eventually, the prices will work out to be roughly the same in both locations as a result of this. So purchasing power parity is basically that, okay? It just stands to reason that prices for goods, where goods and currencies are freely traded, are going to have the same price everywhere. Alright, so here's some reasons why it might not hold true, okay? Sometimes goods and services aren't identical. Alright, sometimes services are not tradable. Okay, and then from what we talked about last class, if there's quotas or tariffs, then you don't have the free flow of goods and services. Alright? And if shipping costs are outrageous, then yeah, that's not going to work out. Alright, plus some prices just take a long time to adjust. Alright? Alright, now this is probably the most important part of today, okay? For the rest of this lecture, we're going to look at the factors that cause currencies to go up and down in value. Alright, and before I get started on this, I want to let you know that whatever happens to one currency, the exact opposite thing happens to the one you're comparing it to. Alright, so for example, if the supply of dollars increases, it's because the demand for another currency has increased. Okay, again, this is just in the foreign exchange market. Or if maybe instead of, let's see, this happening, let's see, if people are demanding more euros, they're probably demanding fewer dollars. Okay, so you have that as an opposite thing. And then lastly, if one currency appreciates, in this case the euro has appreciated, that means the other has to depreciate. And so the currencies will always go opposite each other. So if you can just think in terms of one currency, you can answer questions about the other one just by the nature of it being the opposite. Alright? So here's what will cause a currency to appreciate. Okay, it's a pretty good little list here. If there's an increase in taste for a nation's goods, there will be an increase in demand for that currency. Therefore, the price will go higher. Higher interest rates in a country will also increase demand for a currency. Alright, we'll explain interest rates as we go. A decrease in price level. Okay, so price level is really just a measure of inflation. So if there's less inflation in one country, people want to shop there. That means they have to demand their currency, so the price goes higher. If there's political stability in one country, there will be greater demand for their currency. And then finally, if a nation has a decrease in income, they'll supply less of their currency. And so all of those things are going to cause the currency price to go higher. Therefore, it appreciates. And then we have all the opposites happen for depreciation. Alright, a decrease in taste simply means there will be less demand. Lower interest rates, less demand. Higher price level, less demand. Okay, political instability, less demand. Or an increase in income. If there's an increase in income, that means we're going to buy more things from foreign countries, and so the supply of our currency will increase. And so the combination of all of those things will cause the currency to go down in value. So let's do some examples. Alright. So if I were to increase my demand for a Porsche, Porsches are made in Germany. Let's draw the German euro, or the European euro rather. All right, so we have the euro market. Now pay careful attention to how I'm drawing this. When you draw these graphs, they have to be drawn this way. All right, so it is regular supply and demand, but we put quantity of euros, and then for pricing, since I'm using dollars to buy it, I'm going to put dollars per euro. Okay, so if I want a Porsche, first I have to buy some euros, which means I have to go to the foreign exchange market and I have to increase the demand for euros. When that happens, the price of the euro goes up. So we would say the euro appreciates. Okay, now I'm going to show you the corresponding transaction. All right, I'm only going to do it for this one. So we have the dollar market. Dollars are priced as euros per dollar. Supply, demand, quantity of dollars. When I'm buying euros, I have to give dollars. So the supply of dollars will increase, which means the dollar will depreciate. So that's what we have there. Okay, the euro has appreciated, the dollar has depreciated. So again, we have opposites happening. All right, if you take a peek here, we've got over here the demand increased versus the supply increasing. Supply, demand, opposites. Over here, the euro appreciated, but the dollar depreciated. Opposites. So don't forget, we always go opposite. Okay? All right, here's another example. If Americans decide to boycott French goods, all right, we'll do the euro again. There's a supply and a demand for euros, quantity of euros. Okay? And the price is set at dollars per euro. Okay? So if we don't want to buy French goods, that means we don't need euros, and so the demand for the euro is going to, that's right, decrease. When the euro decreases in demand, it goes down in value. So the euro has depreciated, which means the dollar has appreciated because they have to go opposites. Okay? So make sure you keep that in mind, okay? If we're talking about French goods, draw the euro and then figure out what happens to the euro. If you're asked a question, what happens to the value of the US dollar, then do that. Now, since this particular question does ask about the supply of the US dollar, I'll go ahead and draw that one too, okay? So we've got dollar, it's priced at euros per dollar. You got supply, demand, and quantity of dollars. Since I'm demanding fewer euros, I'm going to supply fewer dollars. And so the dollar appreciates. Okay? All right, the next thing we cover is a nation's income. Okay, or it could be expressed as their growth rate, economic growth rate, that equates to income. So we say there's an inverse relationship. If a nation has higher income, their currency will depreciate. All right? So here's why. So the commentary here says that there's an increase in income and everybody wants to buy more Japanese goods. How's the demand for the yen affected? So I'm drawing the yen market. Okay, I'm pricing it as dollars per yen. I've got a supply curve and a demand curve and a quantity. So if I buy Japanese goods, first I have to buy Japanese yen, which means the demand for the yen increases. Carrying that forward, that means that the yen has appreciated. And if I treat the US as opposite, that means the US dollar will depreciate. And that is why we say there's an inverse relationship between the value of a currency and a nation's income. When US income increased, okay, it increased, then the currency decreased. All right, another example. US is in a recession. These guys don't have jobs. So now what happens? Can they buy as many Japanese products? I wouldn't think so. So now what happens to the yen? Well, we demonstrate by drawing our yen market, priced at dollars per yen, quantity of yen. And since we're not buying Japanese goods, our demand for the yen will fall. So now the yen depreciates, which means the dollar appreciates. All right, now we'll look at interest rates. So when we're referring to interest rates and how it affects currency, you need to be aware that people with a lot of money can put their money anywhere to earn interest. They don't have to keep it in a US bank. They can trade all their currency in for Canadian dollars and put their money in a Canadian bank. All right? And then they'll earn more interest. So if 50 cents here has 50 cents that he wants to put in the bank, interest rates are 5% in the US, but they're 10% in Canada, wouldn't it make sense for him to put the money in a Canadian bank? Absolutely. So, which market will see an appreciated currency? Well, I guess I'll draw both markets again. I've got the Canadian dollar. All right, it's going to be priced at US dollars per Canadian dollar. All right, supply, demand, quantity of the Canadian dollar. And I'm going to draw the US dollar market. And it's priced at Canadian dollars per US dollar, supply, demand, and then quantity of US dollar. So if you want to put your money in a Canadian bank, first you got to exchange dollars for Canadian dollars, which means when you go to the foreign exchange market, you increase demand for the Canadian dollar. That means the Canadian dollar appreciates. In order to get the Canadian dollar, you got to give US dollars. So the foreign exchange bank now has a greater supply of US dollars, which means the US dollar depreciates. And so that's how interest rates are directly related to a currency value. So Canadian interest rates went higher and their currency appreciated. Alright, I think we're good on interest rates. Let's look at price level. So when we talk about price level, that could be inflation or a lack of inflation. Okay, according to what I'm seeing here, Mexico's having a sale. So we want to see how that affects the demand for the Mexican peso. So we're going to price it out at dollars per peso. We've got supply, demand, quantity of pesos. Hopefully you're drawing these graphs as we go, because it's really good to get practice here. So if they're having a sale, people want to shop there. In order to shop there, you first have to buy Mexican pesos. So that means the demand for the peso increases. So whenever price level is low, currencies appreciate. The opposite will be true though. If there's high inflation, people don't want to shop in that country, and so the demand for their currency would fall and therefore depreciate. Alright, an example is here. So in Zimbabwe, they had really bad inflation. Okay, as you can see from these memes, very bad inflation. Alright, so here we have our Texas Tech cheerleader, and she has a choice. She can go to Zimbabwe and buy Zimbabwe dollars to go hunting, or she can go to Mozambique, and you know what, I don't know their currency, so I'll just put that. We'll just call it the M, okay? Anyway, she's using dollars, so she could either buy Zimbabwe dollars, so dollars per Zimbabwe dollar, quantity of Zim dollars, or she could buy the M. Okay, since I didn't tell you this, but Zimbabwe had basically 100 million% inflation in 1 year. So if she books a trip, by the time she gets there, the trip could be like 100 million times more expensive. So is she likely to go to Zimbabwe? Probably not. So the demand for the Zimbabwe dollar is going to fall. Okay, but the demand for the Mozambique currency will increase. So the high inflation in Zimbabwe caused their currency to depreciate. Okay, and the comparatively low inflation in Mozambique caused their currency to appreciate. Alright, let's roll. Now we'll talk about political instability. So you guys know what's his face here, Messi. He wants to put his money in a different bank. He's a little concerned about Argentina because they're very unstable. All right, and you know he's not sure he wants to keep it in Europe either because Spain's a little bit unstable. So he wants to put it in the U.S., right? So if he keeps his money in the U.S., he's got to convert the euros into dollars. So how does that affect, let's see, the supply of the euro in the foreign exchange market? So since we're asked specifically about the euro, we're going to check it out. Dollars per euro, supply, demand, quantity of euros. So if Messi goes to the exchange bank and he says, "Hey, I need some dollars," what does he have to give the exchange bank? He's got to give them euros. So the bank will now have a greater supply of euros. And as a result of the political instability in Spain, the euro will depreciate, which means the dollar does the exact opposite. The dollar is going to appreciate. All right? So far so good, okay? We got 2/3 of the lesson over. I know this one's a little bit long. We got one more thing to cover, and then we're good to go. All right? So let's review real fast. Okay, we know what causes appreciation and depreciation of currency. I forgot to add that back in. Political instability also. Okay, you already have these down in your notes, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. All right? But we have this question, and this is a really good question because it's asked, and it's also misunderstood by so many. All right? Most people are going to say it's better to have a strong dollar. But the right answer is that it depends. We don't know because you have to know from whose perspective, okay? So for example, let's look at the market for corn and tomatoes, okay? In fact, let's see what I'm going to do here. Let's see. The U.S. and Mexico are trading partners. We don't have to pretend they are. The U.S. sells corn to Mexico for $1. Mexico sells tomatoes to the U.S. for 4 pesos. The price of $1 is 10 pesos, and the price of 1 peso is 10 cents. Then this happened. All right, I'm going to draw the currency markets, okay? So I'm going to put the dollar market up top, and it's priced at pesos per dollar. We have a supply curve, a demand curve, quantity of dollars. Then I've got the peso market here, priced at dollars per peso. Got a supply, you got a demand, and you got a quantity of pesos. All right. So we're told that the equilibrium price currently is 10 pesos to buy $1 or 10 cents to buy 1 peso. Okay? So here's what happens. It says here that the U.S. suffers a recession. Well, in a recession, our incomes go down. And so if our incomes drop, that means we're gonna start buying fewer pesos, right? So the demand for the peso drops. And we're going to be supplying fewer dollars to the foreign exchange market. So as a result, the price of pesos drops and the price of dollars goes up. All right? So let's find some new prices. What should they be? Let's double the price. Let's double the price of dollars. It's now 20 pesos, which means that the price of pesos was cut in half. It's now 0.05. So it's a nickel for a peso. All right? So when Mexicans would buy corn, because we sold corn for $1, okay, it would cost them 10 pesos to buy the corn. Now it's going to cost them 20 pesos to buy our corn, because we still charge $1, but now it takes 20 pesos to buy the dollar. All right? Mexicans are still selling us tomatoes for 4 pesos, but now 4 pesos only cost 5 cents each, which is basically 20 cents. Okay? So basically, 20 cents, 2 dimes. That's all it takes. So now, how do we view a strong dollar? Okay? From our perspective, okay, from the U.S. corn farmer's perspective, it's probably not so good because Mexicans aren't going to buy as much corn, okay, because the price doubled for them. On the other hand, if you're a purchaser of tomatoes, you like a strong dollar. So you see how it depends on your perspective? So even it's not just the perspective of Mexicans versus Americans. It's like, okay, I sell corn to Mexico. This is bad for me. On the other hand, I purchase tomatoes to make picante sauce here in Texas. This is good for me because now my tomatoes cost less. So a strong dollar, a weak dollar, it all depends on your perspective, okay? And so you got to consider that. So let's do a couple of examples and then we'll be done. So Justin Bieber, he finally gets deported, takes all his money back to Canada. That's kind of exciting. So how does that affect the value of the Canadian dollar? Well, if we draw a graph of the Canadian dollar, priced at dollars per Canadian dollar, he's going to have to increase demand for it because he's got to convert his US dollars into Canadian dollars. So the value of the Canadian dollar appreciates. Okay? So what then happens to the price that Americans have to pay for maple syrup from Canada? Well, the maple syrup, maybe it cost 5 Canadian dollars, all right, which used to cost 5 US dollars, but now to buy 5 Canadian dollars, it takes 6 US dollars. So yeah, the price goes higher, okay? So that's a bummer. So in effect, is Canada going to sell as much maple syrup to us as they used to? The answer is no. Their exports are going to decrease, all right? On the other hand, well, the question's not here, but basically US imports to Canada, those would go up, okay, because the Canadian dollar will now buy more US dollars. So that's why this stuff is very, it's intricately weaved, okay? There's multiple effects that occur. That's why economics is so important. All right, got one more, then we're done. Meghan Trainor increases her purchases of bass from Djibouti, okay? So, if we set up a graph for the Djibouti booty, all right, and we've got it here as the quantity of booty, and then we price it out at dollars per booty. All right, so if she wants to buy more bass from Djibouti, first she has to buy booty from Djibouti. So in the foreign exchange market, the demand for booty will increase, okay? That's going to drive the price of booty higher, all right? How does that then affect the American dollar? So if the booty appreciated, what has to happen to the dollar? Okay? The dollar has to do the opposite thing, so it depreciates. All right? And what then would happen to the price that foreigners have to pay for US goods? Well, if the dollar went down in price, here's a rule. US goods went down in price. Okay? So US goods are now less expensive. That means US exports, since they're less expensive, are going to increase. But our imports are going to decrease because now our depreciated dollar won't buy as many of the foreign currencies. And so again, this is all just very, everything is interrelated in a globalized society. So really, to answer the question, is it better to have a strong or a weak dollar? You basically have to look at the perspective from every single party. So the answer is always, it depends. Unless you're given more specifics, okay? And in which case you could answer that question.
Come with me now. Come with me now.